Hello, April.
Hello.
That is such a supervillain chair.
I need a little cat.
You definitely do.
Let's see. No, I know. I've actually had this chair every week, but I was watching back our show from last week, and I was like, that chair makes me feel a little pretentious.
You're either a supervillain or you're a Wall Street executive, and both of them are bad.
I know. So I'm like, man, should I keep the chair? Should I not use it as a prop?
I don't. Is the chair comfy? Let's start there. Is it a comfy chair?
It is comfy.
Yeah,
and to be fair, I didn't
tough.
buy this chair.
Tough.
I inherited this. I mean, really, it was my grandfather's, and then it was my dad's, and then my mom was like, I don't want this anymore. Do you? And we're like, sure. But now I just feel like a villain sometimes.
My vote is to keep it. I mean, you do you, but I'm a huge fan of comfort over anything else. I use like one of these gaming chairs that I get off of Craigslist super cheap because I don't like spending money on anything. And so this one works for me, but your chair looks much more comfortable.
Yeah, we probably should have a segment where I can have like a fake little cat. And when I'm being extra witchy, I'll just lean back.
with your witch's mug, aka your mug full of Disney villains.
My Disney mug, yeah, and I'll do just slow turns.
Yeah,
I feel powerful.
I mean, you honestly look powerful. I would say it has Boss Babe written all over it. So
good.
Yeah,
good. That's what I want.
Congratulations.
I'm gonna, and try to convert you into joining my MLM next.
Well, you know what? Since we're gonna do a confession soon, I'm gonna do 2 confessions because you just sparked one.
Oh, wow,
yeah.
Good.
So
all about
which
repentance.
one should I do? Should I do the one that you know about, or should I do the surprise confession?
Do the one I know about first. I like.
Okay.
Keep the suspense.
All right, hold on. Okay, there we are. Yes. I have a confession. Last week, I said something on the air that friends who I love dearly were very offended by. And I need to repent publicly for it. Let me just go ahead and play the clip. This is from last week. Here's what I said out there. I think T Swift is top tier. She is arguably the greatest performer of our generation. Totally. Okay, so I said that T Swift is arguably the greatest performer of our generation. Now, I have a friend that's an artist, that is a brilliant person, and she lit me up in the group chat that I'm in and said, performer? Excuse me? Maybe songwriter, but performer? And that led to me having a long FaceTime conversation with her and another friend of ours, and we talked through it. They almost cut me off. They almost kicked me out of the group chat. But I just want to acknowledge that. And here's the thing. Now that I'm saying this, I know I'm going to get all these Swifties, who are going to be like, why are you repenting? She is the greatest performer of all time. But the reality is, upon further reflection, while T Swift is arguably one of the best songwriters of all time, and she's a great human, when it comes to performances, there are some other artists that we need to consider. So I just want to repent for my slip of the tongue. And
to be fair, you did say arguably.
I did. I tried to qualify it. So to be clear. Okay. So that's confession number 1. Here's arguably the worst confession.
Oh gosh, I'm excited and nervous for you.
I was part of a multi-level marketing network.
No.
And I got my friends involved.
Hold on. Can I try to guess which one?
Yes, you can.
Was it It Works?
No.
It wasn't LuLaRoe.
No.
Was it? It wasn't. I don't think it was Essential Oils.
It wasn't. No, but it was about like holistic clean products. Whether
was
they're
it Plexus?
Nope. Whether they're shampoo products or dietary products. I mean, you might not have heard of them. They're pretty big.
Maybe I haven't.
But
tell me, what was it? Amway?
Close. It was Arbonne.
Arbonne, the makeup.
They do makeup too. Yes, they do a lot of things. And here's the story. My mom.
I don't know a lot of men in Arbonne.
Well, there weren't. My mom got involved years ago with them, and she actually did quite well. Like, she got to the point where she had the Mercedes. And so my mom's a very passionate person. That's where I get a lot of my own passion from. And she convinced me to sign up by investing, term used loosely, investing $2,000. That's like the buy-in for our bond that they push you to do. And then I got several friends of mine to also invest $2,000 under me. Yeah.
You had a downline.
I had a downline. I know. Luckily, we're all still friends. In fact, I got dinner with one of those friends last night. And we were talking about it and laughing along the way that we both, essentially just gave Arbonne $2,000 each in lieu of some products, and that was pretty much it. But yeah, it's true.
Did you get your money back?
I honestly, if I did, it came from my friends.
Oh.
I still feel there are still days where like Facebook will remind me of a post that I did where it's like me and that person, like, this person's going all the way to upper regional diamond platinum level membership.
No.
We're doing it. Oh yeah. Oh no, I was I gave it, I really swung the bat as hard as I could. I had events that no one came out to. I had the whole pitch not nailed down. So
my gosh.
I've been hiding this for a long time because I didn't want to get canceled on the internet and have my audience say, "How dare you?" But I need to repent. And so
we got involved into an MLM.
You did?
Yeah. Do you remember the signs where people would be traveling and they'd say, "Wish you were here," or no, it'd say like, "You should be here." They're like little blue signs. It was World Ventures. It was like a traveling.
Yes, I know World
MLM.
Ventures.
My brother got us into it. Me and Beecher, and I remember like we were like all in for like a day, and Beecher called one of their friends and was giving them the pitch, and the dude was like, this is a pyramid scheme. Beecher's like, no, it's not. And then the guy was like, no, it totally is. And then we realized, oh shoot, it is a pyramid scheme. And so then we pretty much were like, I guess we just threw away. Thankfully, I think it was only like $300 or $400, but still, we
that's
just
nice.
threw it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no bueno.
Anyway, yeah, I repent for that as well from years ago. It was a mistake. And my mom looks back on it now and realizes that it was also a mistake for her, even though, to be fair, she did make real money from it. But, the biggest lie about even legit MLMs, which you can argue are not ever legit, but the biggest lie that they sell you is that you can work part-time for full-time income. That is not true. That is a lie. You have to become the entire brand, and everyone becomes a potential client, including all your friends, and it's awkward as hell. So don't ever do it. Do not do it. It does not work out.
And also the way that they would pitch it to a lot of church moms, like
totally
even women that believe like they're supposed to stay home. Like in their mind, they're like, oh, it's not a job. It's a, I don't know what they would even call it, but somehow they justified it in their head of like, this doesn't count.
Yes, and there have been documentaries about this, by the way. Of like, is it Herbalife that have targeted like minority communities intentionally to suck up money from them. So anyway, this is not about that. This is about me and my problem. So I just want to confess to the audience in the name of Jesus, Daddy God, I'm so
Be
sorry.
Blessed.
Thank you.
Stretching hands out. Thank you for your bravery today.
Thank you so much.
May the Lord. I also have something I need to repent for though.
Okay, I'm ready. And
we're going to tie in our prophecy update with my confession.
Yes.
The Phoenix Suns are out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Not only did they lose in the first round, but the boys got swept.
They got swept.
They got
swept.
They lost.
They got swept.
4-0. So, clearly, my prophecy that God may have sent the solar eclipse to tell us that the Phoenix Suns were going to go all the way was wrong.
Yep.
I was wrong.
Yep.
I was kind of right that they did make the playoffs, though. So,
technically, yes.
Maybe give me a 15% credit, which is still failing. So, I repent of my mistakes.
I forgive you.
Please forgive me. Thank you.
Yes, you're forgiven. Okay.
And go Mavs.
Go Mavs. Enough of that stupid pad. Speaking of bad takes on things, I did want to play this clip from the Phoenix Suns general manager. He spoke to the media. Now, I want the audience to understand the context. The Phoenix Suns were one of the teams that were looking like they could go all the way. They had huge expectations. They got swept in the first round playoffs. That's a huge, colossal failure for a lot of reasons, okay? Like, this is not a good look. They didn't even win one game. So this is what the general manager, I'm going to pull up the clip here.
Is this after they got swept?
This is after they got swept. This is after they got swept. You're going to hear a reporter ask a question. Listen to his response.
Matt, with the championship expectations kind of put out there, can you articulate level of disappointment not getting there? And do you think this is, how fixable do you think this is?
Oh, it's extremely fixable. I mean, let's just be real. Although this isn't a cool narrative, and the national media really won't want to play it out there, but like, ask the other 29 GMs. 26 of them would trade their whole team for our whole team and our draft picks and everything as is. Like, the house is not on fire. We're in great position. It's not hard to fix. It's not like we're like, hey, we don't have enough talent to win a championship. We have enough talent to win a championship, right? Do we have enough continuity? Do we have time together? Like, there's a lot of things we can look at. Do we have like the right leadership in place? Do we have to add some little pieces around? It's not like we don't have people that can score the ball, not that play defense and have one champ. Like, we have all the things. And so, how fixable is it? And I mean, if I read the media, I would think we have a lot of problems. But luckily, I get to spend time with, you know, the best players in the world, in my opinion, the best coaches, GMs, see, like, all these people, and I get to spend time with our people and say, we're in really great shape, and I wouldn't trade our team or our situation for anyone else's, except for I'd like to be playing right now. But besides that, for like how going into the offseason, I feel great about it. It's not like there's a lot of other teams that have good players that have to re-sign them or they're going to lose them or that they're unrestricted free agents. Like, our starting five's coming back. I feel very good about it. How do we make a call?
Good. We'll stop there. Bro, you got swept. You got swept. Like, how do you say all of that when your team got destroyed in the playoffs? It reminds me of the same level of delusion that we heard from our prophecy guy back in the day about the civil war that's going to break out. Like, you know, it's like, bro, what are you reading the room? You got destroyed in the first round playoffs, and your response is, we're great, no problems. Everything's totally fine.
Yeah, you wouldn't trade with anyone else.
Yeah, okay, bro.
What about whoever ends up winning? Now, I gotta be honest here. I've got a little empathy because there was a time where the Dallas Mavericks, which I am a fan of, had the best record in the NBA going into the playoffs. And we lost in the first round. And I still would have said we were still a really good team. We just, people get unlucky. People, you have bad games. You have bad several games.
Sure.
So I can empathize with still wanting to be proud of your team. And also, since they were a 6 seed, they probably do have better draft position than.
Well, it doesn't matter. There's no need. There's nothing to change. You heard him. The starting lineup is just, it's top tier.
No, I know.
Listen, this is not a 1-for-1, but in football, the Philadelphia Eagles, now I'm a Philly guy. I'm right across the bridge, so I'm pretty much in the suburbs of Philly. They started off 10-1, and then finished the season abysmally. And I'll tell you what the talk was. It wasn't, everything's fine. No, guys, we're still a strong team. It was, what happened? How do we collapse? Yeah. We have to rebuild. So this dude's take is just, for me, it just echoed the sentiments of people that we hear so often in church world who are like, I don't get it, guys. All the abuse? No, that's just one-off. The church is doing great, better than ever.
Yeah.
No, as people are fleeing the buildings, and the SBC has a record amount of people leaving their churches, and the take is, no, everything's totally fine. Nothing's on fire. Wouldn't change a thing. Everything's great.
Or it's like Greg Locke, who prophesied that Trump was going to win the 2020 election, and then when Trump lost, he was like, nuh-uh. I'm not a false prophet. I didn't get it wrong. Trump did win. The Democrats just stole it.
Yeah, in the spirit world, Trump is still president. It's like, okay, bro. Okay.
That
and the Phoenix Suns are doing just fine as they got swept, right? It all makes sense.
Right, because God would tell you Trump's going to win, but God couldn't foresee the Democrats doing whatever the Democrats outsmarted God. Doesn't make sense. Okay, can you, though, just as a sidebar, I am not looking forward to, if Trump does win this year, those Trump prophets are going to come back and be like, see, we just had the year wrong.
There is no doubt about that. I have thought about that so many times. If Trump wins, it's going to validate for them how they were right the entire time. They just had to, and they're going to spin it. God is a God of patience. God was testing the church, making sure that we would endure even through the abysmal Marxist satanic regime of Joe Biden. And look, we did. And now our man is I mean, that's going to be the narrative. I mean, 1,000% if Trump gets elected again.
I'm going to be annoyed preparing for it if it happens.
Same. So why don't we get into some good news? We have some massively good news this week, okay?
Yes.
It turns out that the United Methodist Church, they overturned their ban on LGBTQ plus clergy. This is I cannot express to people enough how much of a win this is. So what happened is there was in the Book of Discipline, the UMC had in the 1970s, they put a statement in that essentially said, anyone who acts, the word they use is homosexual. So anyone who acts with homosexual behavior is pretty much barred from being in ministry. And that got erased. That got deleted from the Book of Discipline. People were going crazy. People were super happy about it. I actually have a video right here I'll play so people can hear and see the jubilee that broke out at the General Conference when this happened. So here we go.
There is nothing.
I love it. I mean, so
Beautiful.
happy. Honestly, it was. It made me tear up. Like when I read the news, I did like an Instagram story and I got emotional. You know, it just felt like a massively, it was a huge domino, a massive domino. So here's just some of the context, and I'll give it over to you, April. So this is from CBS. United Methodist delegates repealed their church's long-standing ban on LGBTQ clergy with no debate on Wednesday, removing a rule forbidding, quote, self-avowed practicing homosexuals from being ordained or appointed as ministers. Delegates voted 692 to 51, so not even close, at their General Conference, the first such legislative gathering in 5 years. That overwhelming margin contrasts sharply with the decades of controversy around the issue. Past general conferences of the UMC had steadily reinforced the ban and related penalties amid debate and protests, but many of the conservatives who had previously upheld the ban have left the denomination in recent years, and this general conference has moved in a solidly progressive direction. Applause broke out in parts of the convention hall Wednesday after the vote. A group of observers from the LGBTQ advocacy groups embraced, some in tears. Thanks be to God, said one. So really powerful, really powerful.
I believe they also overturned their ban to perform same-sex weddings too.
I believe that's also the case.
So there are several things, and they're still voting because it ends on Friday. So there's still a few more things coming up. But yeah, so this had originally come up, and I think it was 2019 was the last time that they had met, and it didn't pass because they still had a lot more of the conservative churches in their denomination, which after there was such pushback on this, I think it was like almost 25% or a quarter of the denominations left the UMC because they didn't want to be queer affirming, and they saw this was progressing in that way. And with those people gone, they were able to pass this pretty overwhelming, like easily. It wasn't even a debate. No debate. There is something so healing. Like I teared up watching them celebrate this decision because for so long, even in queer affirming churches, there's kind of it almost feels like, yes, you're welcome, but it's more of a tolerant feel, like display, not so much a celebration,
like a
and
toleration.
But to see like ministers and pastors not just tolerating queerness, but celebrating it and seeing this as a victory and seeing the divine in LGBTQ people was so healing, because you just don't see that like in day in and day out. The people that you and I interact with on the internet, it's a lot of conservatives. It's a lot of people telling us, that we are going to hell and taking people to hell with us because of our affirmation of queer people.
Yeah.
But it's so, I don't know, something just healed in my soul seeing the joy. And I think like joy is such a it's an act of resistance, and seeing, and like, it's like, yes, even in the face of hostility, we can still have joy, and seeing that joy of some good news finally, when, in a slew of bad news, but like there's still good in the world. And it was just,
Yeah.
it gave me hope.
Yeah, totally. In the video I played, the demographic looked like a lot of older people and very
Yeah.
like multi-ethnic, which made me really happy to see that there have been people for years, decades, fighting for this change. I finally got to see the change happen, and that's what got me so emotional. I was just thinking about all the queer clergy, all of the folks who were allies when you and I were not there yet, right? When so many people in the deconstruction space weren't there yet, they were paving the way for us to change our mind, and they were doing the work behind the scenes for decades to make this change happen. And it just felt very historic. Like I told Sarah, I said, this is a historic moment. This is one of the moments I think that we're going to look back on and say, this was one of the things that changed the tide even more so. I think between that and Richard Hayes' new book, which we covered on TNE Responds the past 2 episodes, I just think that there are some major shifts happening from people who, or organizations that initially were part of the problem and advocating for problematic theology, changing their minds on this. So, man, we see a lot of bad news. We see a lot of BS on Twitter, and we cover Christian nationalism. You wrote a book on that's coming out soon, right? All that's so we know all the bad. We know about Project 2025, and so to have a day where I could share on social media, it's a good news day. This is a huge development. It just felt great. It just felt so good to celebrate the win.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of the more conservative Christians are quite mad about this. I think
Totally.
People are like, oh, another one bites the dust. Like the Sean Foyts of the world are just super mad, and they're painting it as like, no, this is demonic and this is the great falling away, or whatever they want to say. But I really do believe in my heart of hearts that the church generally, there will come a time in the next, I would say, 20 years that the majority of American churches will be queer affirming.
I agree. We look back now on segregation and go, what was the church thinking then?
Right.
What were these people thinking that God mandated segregation? And I really hope that we look back the same way on this issue. And I also hope, maybe even more importantly, that the white evangelical church repents, like actually acknowledges, yes, we've been part of the problem for decades. Our theology has killed people. Our theology has harmed people. We tolerate Christian nationalist organizations and speakers in our spaces who say things like we have to eradicate transgenderism. I hope that the evangelical church, I hope I live to see the day where they start en masse repenting for the harm that they've caused, because man, just being in this space like you, we see the outpouring of that theology. It's so damaging.
Yeah, and I know like the pushback that they'll say is like, oh, this is just the church going with culture. You're not standing on biblical truth.
Yeah.
But it's the exact same argument Christians would have made to try to keep slavery when they were using the Bible to justify that. Like, why are we going with the culture? Same thing with just racial segregation, even interracial marriage. Bob Jones University didn't overturn their ban on interracial dating until the year 2000.
Crazy. People don't know that. They don't freaking know that. Yeah, I mean, think about all the big shifts in American culture: women's suffrage, slavery, segregation, civil rights, etc. There were always a good chunk, if not the majority, of white Protestants or white evangelicals who insisted that the Bible was clear and were in the opposing view. And we look back on all of those things and go, no, those moves were all completely right, and there's more work to do. So I still to this day do not buy the argument of, oh, no. You're right, Tim. Those people were all wrong back then. They used the Bible in unhelpful ways. But on this topic, the Bible is definitely clear. It's like, no, sorry, I just don't buy the argument. So
miss me with that.
Yeah, miss me with that, 100%. Speaking of being on the right side of history, have you been following the? It feels just like a massive student protests all over the place in solidarity with the Palestinians and with Gaza, because it's been wild to witness.
Yeah, I've seen different clips online and just been following mostly Twitter and some on the news, but yeah, it's all over the place.
It is Here's the hard part for me. Obviously, if anyone listens to this show, they know that we firmly are on the side of the Palestinian people deserve to live. There's a genocide happening, all that stuff. We're totally there. I'm struggling with how to make sense of just these random video clips I'm seeing all over the internet, right? I see this one video of this person saying this, then I see a video of the opposite thing, then I hear the news people say one thing. It's been so hard to keep. And also, like, okay, what university is this? At what time of day? What happened before this clip was taken? It's been so hard for me to kind of get my head around the general theme, besides saying, from best I can tell, it looks like a lot of this started in New York at the University of Columbia, and then kind of grew out from that. And I do have a friend at Union Theological Seminary, which is very close to the University of Columbia. And he said that, like, a lot of what we're seeing in the media, the narrative of like rampant anti-Semitism, from his experience and from the students he's talked to and the people who are in the seminary students who are going over there, it seems like it's been really overblown and it is not the narrative at all. So that's just been very interesting to watch on my end.
Yeah, it feels very similar to what we saw happen in the media and when conservative pundits back in 2020 with all the Black Lives Matter protests that were happening everywhere. Like, they would show the clips of of the more violent aspects, like the looting or, you know, fires or whatever. But then studies came out later that showed, I think it was either 94 or 96% of all protests were completely peaceful. So, like, I do think there are some there is definitely anti-Semitism.
No doubt.
There's for sure been a rise in it, and that definitely needs to be condemned. But on the whole, you can't, most of this is peaceful. And these are very brave students and professors that are putting their literal bodies on the line for a people group that is just being completely annihilated right now. That deserves a voice, that they don't have a voice. And so these people are being the voice for them. Like, and honestly, I wasn't there for the Vietnam War.
Right.
But from what I know of history, it feels like this is our modern day Vietnam War.
Well, and Columbia has a history of this. I mean, students took over buildings in protest of the Vietnam War at Columbia. So I think a lot of students are aware of that history and believe that, hey, we have to participate in this legacy. Now, at the time, Columbia administration was very much opposed to it, and now Columbia looks back on that as an act of bravery for those students and faculty. So I think a lot of folks, especially at University of Columbia, see themselves as participating in that legacy of, no, this is wrong. We have to take a stand. We have to say, absolutely not, and here's our demands. The problem, though, has been, it seems like there's been a real overcompensation from like the faculty, well, not from the faculty, but from like the administration, because a lot of faculty are actually partnering with students and are locking arms with them and all that stuff.
Right.
But have you seen some of the pictures that have come out of like the military like force of police storming some of these buildings to arrest college students? It's crazy.
Yeah, it definitely, it seems so overblown. And so you don't need a military force for students that are just sitting on a sidewalk with signs.
Look at this.
Like,
Look at this
that
picture.
is wild.
That is wild. A CNN reporter said he's never seen a police force presence like what he saw as they marched into. I believe that some protesters took over one of the halls. They called it Hind Hall. It was in honor of a slain Palestinian girl who was only 6 years old. And some of the images of them storming that building, they have what looks like armored trucks with like ladders as they breach some of these doors, throwing in tear gas, things like that. And one thing that I think we need to recognize here is that we don't understand that this whole militarization of the police force in America is a new phenomenon. It has not always been like this. And to see police force with like this kind of riot gear, with tanks sometimes, with AR-15s, with all this gear that looks like a military presence, has been a major shift in how we handle policing in America. It's been wild.
Well, I feel like there was this similar militarization of police force, like back in the civil rights too, when they would, with the marching in the streets and all of that. But I think generally, it does seem like it's kicked up in the last several years.
I definitely need to get a guest on to kind of walk me through that, because I don't have all the data. I'm not sure, but my understanding is that a lot of like the tanks, that kind of weaponry, and we see this stuff. Like there have been tanks in the streets in some of these situations, or some of these like types of vehicles that are very militarized, and also how the police trains, right? How they're training, etc., has been a real uptick, at least in that. And so, again, like I've just seen so many videos online of unarmed peaceful protesters having their encampment stormed, being arrested, being kicked off. And there's like this other narrative I hear from some people saying like, well, a lot of these protesters are not students, right? Or they're professional protesters. I think part of that, first off, I think some of that is just not true. But the other side of it is, like for example, in the case of University of Columbia, there are other faculty from nearby colleges, including Union or students from Union, that are also part of the encampment. They're still students. They're just not students at that school. So then the police say, well, we arrested 200 people. Half of them were not students at University of Columbia. Okay, fine. But the other half were still students at some other college. It's not like there's some deep state Antifa people who are like, oh, a new protest. Let's fly 400 people over to take over. Now can there be some examples of people who do that? For sure, but to make it seem like it's somehow widespread, I just think is intentionally used by media sources and by right-wing sources as a narrative that, oh, this is not sincere. These are paid actors trying to overthrow, civilized society or something like that.
And that is not a new argument, literally. And this is on a much smaller scale. But when I was part of the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020 in my small town, Tennessee, all of the people that came to counter protest us, and some of them were like elected officials, they spread rumors that all of us were bussed in from out of state, and that we weren't actually we weren't students, we weren't actually residents of the city, and that George Soros was paying us to be there. And literally none of that was true. So I do think there is this knee-jerk reaction to just, if you can't stop the ideology or the movement, it's just to demonize the people that are doing it.
Yeah. So just to wrap this part up, to be emphatically clear to the audience, anti-Semitism is bad. It's wrong. It should be condemned. We have seen some videos of people saying things that are totally out of control. I mean, there was that one guy who was on TikTok saying things about how, Zionists don't deserve to live. That's bad. Now, that student also issued a statement saying, I was wrong. I regret what I said. I'm sorry for saying that, which is way more than you're going to see from a Charlie Kirk type of figure, right? Saying crazy shit.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, but still, it's wrong. It's bad. It should be condemned. And also, first off, a lot of these encampments are led or are full of Jewish students. So let's just start there. And we also can say that currently, as it stands, the U.S. is funding the Israeli government, which is currently committing a genocide toward the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. And that is bad, and that is wrong, and that needs to be stopped. And I applaud students who are saying, you know what, I'm going to put my grades on the line, I'm going to put my potential career on the line, I'm going to put my potential safety on the line to advocate for the liberation of the Palestinian people who are currently being bombed indiscriminately, where children, women, men are dying or being starved to death. We absolutely stand with them and say absolutely solidarity.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that feels like the gospel.
I mean, liberate the oppressed. Jesus.
Yeah.
The Bible is clear or something. I don't know. So anyway, so I wanted to at least address that because I know that I haven't talked about it much on Instagram, and I've been trying to navigate how do I communicate this stuff. So I figured let's just talk about it now on the Friday recap. I'm aware of it. I see what's going on, and my plan is to bring more content around this topic as I get the right people, lined up for discussion. So, okay. Well, our main story today.
Finally.
Yeah, I know.
Took a minute.
I did take a minute. I know, friends. It's been a little while. We got to talk about John Macarthur again. This bro is out of control.
Has he ever been in control?
Maybe when he was like 13.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
When he was
maybe,
young.
Yeah. John, this dude just says shit. He just says stuff. And it's crazy. And it seems like no matter what he says, there are tons of people who really believe that he is a faithful preacher of the gospel and some kind of like expert in the Bible. He has no PhD. I don't even believe he has a real master's degree. And
But
this
he
guy
does
just
have
says-
his own Bible.
He does have his
with
own
his
Bible.
name on it. That's bigger
has-
than the Bible.
Yeah, it's
words.
sold tons of. I mean, he sold. So, for anyone in the audience who might not know, let me just say very briefly: John MacArthur is one of the most recognizable pastors in evangelical spaces, if not beyond. I mean, he's a very recognizable figure. He has his own biblical commentary. He's written dozens of books. He's sold millions of copies. He has a pretty large church in California. He's worth a lot of money. He has his own seminary, and in this like American Reformed space of, biblical inerrancy and the Bible's clear and here's the true gospel, very Calvinist kind of thinking, John MacArthur is one of the dudes. It's like John Piper and John MacArthur and then R.C. Sproul before he passed away. That's like your three horsemen, I don't know, the apocalypse or something. But, that's not even right. Isn't it 4 horsemen?
Yeah, it's 4. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
That's so close, so close.
Yeah.
So I say all this because John has a lot of controversy around him for a long time. His comments on slavery, his comments on women,
his covering up for a pedophile.
Thank you, April. And I did a full half-hour deep dive on, 45-minute deep dive on this a couple episodes back. It's on the podcast, so I'm not going to go into it now. Anyway, John has one-upped himself again. This time, he's talking about mental health. Let me pull up at least the screen grab here, because we're going to play this video. This video is shocking. Okay, so John MacArthur's to the right. The guy on the left, this is Costi Hinn. Costi Hinn is the nephew of the one and only Benny Hinn. Okay?
Correct.
This bro grew up in the prosperity gospel movement. He eventually defected, wrote a book about it, and now he's went from one fundamentalism to the complete other fundamentalism. This bro is on camera saying Catholics aren't really saved. And as you can see, he's a big John MacArthur fan. He's sitting next to him. And I follow I follow Costi on Instagram. He's always talking about John MacArthur. Just keep that in mind.
Ugh. Okay.
Should I just play the opening few seconds to kind of set the
Let's
tone
do
here?
it. Yeah,
Okay.
play it.
I'm
Play
just going
it.
to say, friends, just buckle up. Just if
Buckle
you're
up.
driving, do not swerve off the road. Here we go.
There's no such thing as PTSD. There's no such thing as OCD. There's no such thing as ADHD.
Okay, stop. Out of the gate, swinging.
No
There's
such thing.
no such thing as PTSD.
Can I just say
there's-
there's no such thing as John MacArthur?
Yeah, right. There's no such thing as
Same
dispensationalism. Yeah, like there's no such thing as Calvinism. Okay, so we're already out of the gate. But this clip gets much worse. So, in case you're wondering, everyone, if you have OCD, if you struggle with PTSD, you actually don't have any of those things. Okay? You're just making up in your head. Let's keep on rolling.
Those are noble lies.
Lies.
Noble
To-
ones.
Noble.
Basically, give the excuse to, in the end of the day, to medicate people.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Is this like a big pharma conspiracy
Yeah, it
situation?
is. That's where we're heading. That's where we're heading. Yeah. Get ready. Get ready.
And Big Pharma's in charge
There
of
it
all.
is.
I see. I am a prophet. I am.
Big Pharma is in charge of it all. I mean, this is like, oh, we're going down that rabbit hole. Now, look, here's why this is tricky. Because if this was, ignore the PTSD thing doesn't exist. If I was listening to someone that I liked and respected, and they're like, hey, Big Pharma has an incentive to over-medicate people because they make money. And there's been links to them talking to doctors and giving unhealthy incentives for doctors to prescribe their medication. I would say yes. This is the opioid epidemic, right? Like we can track that. I do not think that Big Pharma is like necessarily a good thing. I don't think that they have like altruistic intention. All right. I don't think that at all. But to then go down from like these things don't exist and Big Pharma has manufactured these imaginary things so they can medicate people is just such a crock of horse garbage, of horse.
Right.
poop.
It's going from one extreme to the other.
Right.
Yeah.
But John ain't done yet. We're just getting warmed up.
Oh, whoa.
if you understand, take PTSD for example. What that really is grief. You are fighting a war, you lost your buddies, you have a certain amount of survival guilt because you made it back, they didn't. How do you deal with the grief? Grief is a real thing. But grief is part of life. And if you can't navigate grief, you can't live life.
All right, can we just pause here? Can we just pause on this?
Pause.
I do not have PTSD. I know people who have. I know that people who come back from war, it's a real thing, right?
Yeah.
John's answer to someone who fought for their country overseas, probably saw things that they can never unsee, and is now struggling with the PTSD of that is, hey, you actually don't have that at all. You just have grief. If you can't deal with grief, you can't navigate life. What kind of advice is that? What kind of help is that to anyone
No help at all.
It's no help.
That's just like saying, you know what? Sucks to suck. Get over it.
Yeah, it sucks to suck. Oh, you got grief? That too bad, so sad. Just learn how to deal with it. No empathy, no willingness to understand, to see the suffering of someone else, and to say, how do we navigate this? This is such a classic example of, for the world of fundamentalism, like John Macarthur's fundamentalism, it's all binaries, and empathy is on the bottom of the list. It is just, here's how I interpret scripture, now you must interpret it as well.
Yeah, even the way he just nonchalantly is like, PTSD is just grief because, you lost your buddy in the war. Like, he's just so that's huge. That's huge. That's life-shaking and shattering. Like,
right.
It's so dismissive, too, of
right.
Like, what that experience is like.
Right. No, John, most people do not witness their buddy, being shot to death. Like, that's not a common experience. That is an abnormal experience that causes something deep in the human psyche that can create PTSD. It's been studied. They actually do studies on this. They do peer-reviewed research on this. And then here's John from the comfort of his stupid couch with like 3 other white dudes. Nah, PTSD just doesn't exist. Like, oh my God, John. Okay.
Such a privileged take.
Such a privileged take.
All right, continue.
All right.
But if you clinically define that, you can give them a pill, a series of medications, and they end up in L.A. homeless on the sidewalk.
Wow.
All so stupid. Oh my gosh.
They're not giving them heroin, John. I'm just like, what? The whole point is not to have them end up on the street in LA, because PTSD, if gone untreated, can cause people to lose their job, to lose their relationships, to lose their family, and then they could end up in a really dire place where they're unsheltered, unhoused, they can't, afford to take care of themselves. That's the whole point of trying to treat these things.
That's like the old church ladies when I was growing up that thought my little pony tattoo was the gateway to me eventually getting a real tattoo by a Satanist who put ink on me that made me want to go join a witch's coven.
For people who argue that deconstructing is a slippery slope, these people are all about slippery slopes.
Like, no. They're they're the kings of the slippery slope.
Yeah. They're like, well, if you have PTSD and take medication for it, you're gonna end up homeless in LA. It's like, whoa, how do we get from getting treatment to being unsheltered in LA? Like, I'm sorry, John. Like, how many steps did we just slide past to get to that scenario? Like, the link is ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we keep
got
going?
More? Sure.
Oh, we got so much more. Buckle up.
This is in regard to children, it's the most deadly thing that's been unleashed on children, medication.
Wow.
We're trying to make clear to parents that behavior is essentially the result of choices that kids make. And
okay, can I just pause here? Two quick observations. Number one, it is ironic and maddening that this man has documented cases of him protecting men on his staff who molested their own children. And this guy really wants to pretend that he cares about kids. That's number one. That's
and
number
then
one.
shaming the mom for divorcing the man who molested the child.
Publicly shaming
Publicly her.
For sure. Like,
Miss me with your care about children, bro.
Miss me. And the other thing is, okay, our oldest, he's going to turn 4. My oldest is a great kid. He finds himself in like these loops all the time. Like he likes to watch things spin. And when he gets in that mode, it's just like tunnel vision. That's not a discipline issue. I can't spank him out of these cycles. That would be a terrible take. That's just how his brain is wired at the moment. Like he just likes the stimulation of making things spin. But for John, any kind of behavior that is abnormal, right? Like maybe being whatever it could be, is not an issue of like a mental thing or maybe like needing to work through it with empathy and grace. It is a disciplinary thing that the child must take responsibility for and the parent must make the child aware of. It's just it's such a toxic way of viewing children and raising them that way. It's horrible.
Well, it's just such a rigid black and white ideology. Like everything about fundamentalist views is so dogmatic, including raising children, and the fact that if you have a neurodivergent child, that you can just I'm pretty sure they are pro spanking, but you could just literally discipline them into not having that, even though they were born with that. And just to be clear, I am against spanking.
Yes.
So just want to state that.
Absolutely. Yes.
But yeah, it's
it's unreal.
Maddening.
Yeah, it's maddening.
And if you parent them properly, they'll make right choices.
Not true.
But if you
not true. I know we're pausing so
true.
much. my parents are one of the hard. I love my parents. They're amazing people. All 3 of their kids, me, my brother, my sister, turned out very, very differently. They did not. My sister and brother did not make the decisions that my parents wanted them to make ultimately regarding Christianity, how they lived their life, etc. Okay, and they did everything by the book. They raised us the way that John Macarthur would tell them to raise us, etc. And it didn't work. And in the beginning, it threw especially my mom for a loop. She couldn't believe it. She was shocked. She's like, wait, I don't get it. I was told if I do this, I get this result. And it didn't happen. So this advice is just total garbage. I would throw it as far away as you can in the waste bin of your mind and hit delete and get rid of it. It's terrible.
Yeah, you can argue there are better ways to parent than there are bad ways to parent. There are good ways to parent. But also every child is different. And you could be the best parent in the world.
Did your doorbell just ring?
My doorbell did just ring.
Do you, Theo, get that?
I think Beecher just got home. Beecher talking by just gave me a look. I don't know who it is, but they said,
like
sorry to disturb you.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, it sounds like a solicitor. Do you want to buy solar?
It's probably an MLM.
No, they heard us.
Just kidding.
It's an Arbonne rep.
Anyway, every child is different. And what drives me crazy about also these fundamentalist circles is they view children as property.
Yes.
Of like, they're not viewing children as individual human beings who have a mind of their own, who have likes and dislikes of their own, who are unique as an individual, as part of the image of God. Each person is unique, but they view children as children, not humans. Like not as, people with autonomy.
Right.
And so that also, anyway, I could go on a little tangent.
No, that's what we're here to do.
But my parents also raised us very conservative, and I'm bi, and one of my brothers is gay. So
I guess they didn't raise you right.
Yeah.
By the way, can we just say that Costi Hinn, I think Costi is way more sensible than John, and I feel like in his with this body language and what he's thinking is probably
he's uncomfortable.
Like, how did I get here next to this dude saying the craziest things I've ever heard? And I love John, right?
You can see regret in that little furrowed brow right there.
Absolutely can. Thoughts and prayers to Costi, because this clip's been all over Twitter, and he's just right there, right next to him. So that stinks. All right.
Blame it on something other than their choices, and you identify them as having something they can't do anything about, but medicate it. You literally are turning your child into a potential well, not only a potential drug addict, but maybe a potential
Oh my God.
criminal.
What the?
How?
I haven't seen this whole clip.
Oh, you haven't?
No, that's why I was surprised about the big pharma thing. I only saw the very beginning where he said ADHD or PTSD does not exist.
No. It gets so much worse. That was the appetizer, the appetizer to get us to this point where John argues that if your child is on some kind of medication, which, by the way, my understanding is that children on medication is not a very common thing. I could be wrong. That will lead your child to becoming a drug addict and potentially a criminal.
This is such a leap. Like, is he hurting himself with this stretch? Like, this is, I don't even know. Like what does one even say?
How do you get commentary on this?
I think you could make an argument that there are probably some people out there and some children that are, misdiagnosed.
Oh, for sure.
And improperly medicated. 100%. But to say that it's all children, that nobody needs to be medicated, like, it help. Like, if you have ADHD or, PTSD if you're older, but medication helps you function. Like, it's not a net negative. It's a net positive for a lot of people. And to just be so dismissive, to be like, if you're on that, you're going to be a criminal.
Right,
like,
right.
What?
Yeah, I mean, what? Every time we talk about mental health on Instagram, people are always like, this medication, whatever it could be, really has helped me become like a functioning
depression
adult.
Too, or chronic anxiety or whatever the thing is. Like, there's stuff that helps.
And to be very clear, I agree with you. Like, I'm not saying that Big Pharma is doing this because, out of the goodness of their heart. Like, they have real incentive here to make a lot of money. Okay, because this is what capitalism is based off of.
Two things can be true at the same time.
Exactly right. Right. All right. Yeah, but let's keep going, April.
There's more.
Because they never learn how to navigate life in a socially acceptable way.
Okay, that's the end. He essentially says that they'll become criminals because they haven't figured out a way to navigate life in a socially acceptable way, which is really code for the way that we think it's socially acceptable.
Right.
Yeah. This is a disaster.
What a punk.
What?
Not a good punk. Not a good 90s, 2000s punk.
Go home, John MacArthur.
Go home, John MacArthur.
Home. You're drunk. You are drunk.
My gosh.
I don't even know what to say to this. It is. Now, I will say, it seems like a lot of people, including conservatives, many anyway, are giving John hell for this, as they should.
Yeah.
What will kill me, though, is that nothing's going to happen to John's platform or ministry. Like, there's not going to be, and John's never going to say he's sorry, right? Like, and this is a great example. I have been on Twitter. I've been doing this work now for 3 years plus. I've seen a lot of bros like John say a lot of messed up crap. I cannot think, besides one example, maybe a mega church pastor dude, I cannot think of one time besides that one I just thought of. So 99% of the time, there's no statement issued of correction, of apology, of humility, of saying, hey, I was wrong. Hey, I made a mistake. Hey, it was a bad use of I said this thing the wrong way. I mean, think about Josh Howerton. What's his approach? He finally apologizes by plagiarizing someone else's sermon and then doubles down on that. Right? Like that. This is the evangelical the bro-evangelical approach. You say something crazy, people push back, and then you say, I'm a victim of cancel culture.
Yeah,
that's how this works.
That's the playbook.
That's the playbook. There's no, I mean, to my point, that one student who made the terrible comments about the Zionists not deserving to live actually issued like a 4-paragraph statement saying, I own this. It was a mistake. I was really heated in the moment. I regret saying it. I believe that all people should be able to live everywhere. At least that student acknowledged. Now, whether you believe him or not, it's up to you. But at least he said, I have to own this. It was a big mistake. I regret saying it. That's already 10 steps down the slippery slope, so to speak, of humility and grace compared to these bros who will just say this stuff and not take ownership of it at at all and only double down and say, no, I'm a victim. My words were taken out of context. Woe is me.
They're narcissists. This mega church culture is just is a perfect ground for harboring narcissists. Same with Mark Driscoll. Yeah, it is a fun times. We should go back to UMC, to the good news. Actually, can I read a live update that just happened?
Oh, yes.
So with the so they also removed a ban where you could raise money to help anything with queer nonprofits to help LGBTQ. There was a ban that you couldn't raise money if it benefited LGBTQ people. They lifted that. And with the removal of the funding ban, the UMC General Commission on Archives and History announced at a news conference that it is opening a center for LGBTQ United Methodist history and heritage that's going to basically be researching to tell queer stories within the United Methodist Church.
You know what that deserves? A little applause. Yes. That's awesome. That's great news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is great news. So celebrate the little victories, stupid John MacArthur.
Yeah. It's all you stink, John. Boo. Let's get into the tweet of the week. Actually, let's start with this one. Here we go. Now, listen, I have spoken to Samuel Say privately. Okay, I've talked to him before. He's a nice human being, but this take is totally trash. He says, I know a lot of people. Oh, sorry. He's quote tweeting the John MacArthur clip that we just played.
Where in the quote in that tweet is, there's no such thing as PTSD or OCD or ADHD.
That's right. And then Samuel says, I know a lot of people feel really strongly about mental health, but please consider that the only authoritative, inspired, infallible, and inerrant word on mental health is Scripture. Psychologists can be helpful, but they aren't inerrant. Test their theories with the Bible. Now, April, what I did was I called my accountant this morning and I said, you know what, accountant, do you do all of your math and calculations based on the Bible? Because that has to be your ultimate standard. And he informed me that he only calculates in shekels. So I'm safe. I'm good. It is the biblical standard or nothing. None of this U.S. currency garbage or decimals and dollar signs. No. That is worldly standards, okay? Can't use them. My accountant officially is only on the shekel system, or he's a heretic. So,
and what is change that with, instead of mental health, just say medical health.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can't use that new technology to heal that broken bone with the cast because you've got to use your education. All knowledge comes from the Bible. Doctors can be helpful, but they aren't inerrant. Is that chemo really helping you?
Exactly.
Test that theory with the Bible.
Imagine going to your doctor and being like, hey, was your medical training based on the authoritative and inspired, infallible, inerrant word of God? Because if it wasn't, I'm not sure I can trust you. Who would ever say that? We assume that your doctor, whatever advice they give, that they're a credible source because they studied this. But for some people, when it comes to mental health, suddenly Scripture, and again, which verses are we talking about here? The one where you're supposed to just pray it away? The one where Jesus says, don't be worried about anything. You go, okay, done. Is that how this works? Come on.
Oh my gosh. I know. Well, and I think that's also shows the problem too, is they don't see mental health as medical health. Totally. Your brain is part of your body.
100%.
And it's just as valuable as the rest of your body. And in some ways more so. Yeah. I think.
Yeah.
Totally. But yeah, it's just such a stupid take.
Speaking of stupid, let's go to tweet number 2. This one comes from an account called Smash Bales. The highest calling. Actually, do you want to read this one?
Sure.
Okay.
The highest calling for Christian women is to be a godly wife and bear Christian children who are arrows to be shot at the enemy.
Such a pro-child statement.
Again, dehumanizing children. Yeah. They're not human beings. They're arrows to be shot at the enemy.
What does that mean?
Because you're taught in Sunday school and women's events, whatever, that you are in charge of raising the next generation of warriors for Christ. And, you've seen those memes on Facebook where they're sending there's a meme where it's a girl walking into her public school with the sword, like, because public school is behind enemy lines, and they're sending little Christian children to go.
Right. It reminds me of this song right here. Can you hear this?
I think I know where this is going.
I may never march in the infantry, ride in the cavalry, shoot the artillery. I may never zoom or the enemy, but I'm in the Lord's army.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I mean, it's a complete dehumanization of children. They are simply tools or weapons to be shot at the enemy, whoever that is. So,
and it's also just untrue that a Christian parent will raise a Christian child.
Right. And it's also untrue that the highest calling for Christian women is to be a wife and bear children.
Yeah. But that is a very prevalent belief in fundamentalist
Definitely.
Circles.
This has very much quiverful vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's a stupid tweet. Here's one that was also super shocking. Well, that's the wrong one. This comes from my favorite Daily Wire reporter, Megan Basham, who also, might I just add, wrote a book about the secret George Soros funding of evangelical institutions, and John MacArthur wrote an endorsement for it that she felt like she needed to parade around as a big deal. And I'm thinking to myself, Meg, are you really proud that John MacArthur, the guy who protects pedophiles, and who says crazy stuff, is endorsing your book? That might be more damning than it is endorsing, in my opinion.
Except not in those circles. They love him. He can do no wrong. He's like Trump.
It's wild. It's wild.
Yeah.
All right, you want to read this one too?
Sure. She says, it's almost like there's a reason God gave the task of leading and exercising authority within the church to men, because the natural community-oriented bent of women leads to empathy-based heresy and explains why feminine leadership is not conducive to guarding sound doctrine.
Has she read the Acts Church? They live like a freaking commune.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Empathy-based heresy.
What?
How dare you care about other people, you heretic?
Let's see. Is the fruit of the Spirit heresy then? Is 1 Corinthians 13 heresy? Is there any talk about, like in the Apostles' Creed, about empathy? Is that in there?
Also, she's a woman, so based on her own logic, we can't listen to her.
I'm sorry. I can't take it with these folks. I cannot do it. How are we supposed to take them seriously with takes like this? Like, this woman, she wrote a book about the deep state funding of the liberal agenda and evangelicalism, and we're supposed to take it credible with tweets like this? Empathy-based heresy? What does that mean?
Right, and women can't lead because of the natural community-oriented bent that women have. Like, literally the whole early church were house churches and community.
If that claim was true, that women were more naturally community-oriented, that would only prove the point that we need more women leading in our churches.
I know, seriously.
Like, great, flood the church, please, with women leaders, because we need more community. We need more community-centered ways of being as a church, as opposed to this event-centered garbage. It is...
It's just so mad. It's like, reminds me of, what was the guy's name? Some white pastor a few years ago tweeted that made a case for why empathy was a sin.
Oh, Doug Wilson did that, didn't he?
It might have been him, but there was another guy too. James White.
I'm sure.
Ring a bell?
Oh,
anyway.
James White definitely rings a bell for me. Yeah. Jeez.
But yeah, there is this whole move because so much like I had a run-in with her again last night, because she had tweeted, the government's considering bringing in Palestinian refugees to America, and she quote tweeted it and was like, only let in Christian refugees.
Like, what? How?
And Yeah, and I was like, okay, just like Jesus said, to only love your Christian neighbors. And then she got all defensive, and she was like, we're not supposed to, Jesus wants us to love Christians more because that's our blah, blah, blah. And she's like, we can't just bend over backwards for terrorists. And like painting all Palestinians
It's
as
such a
terrorists
common
is so
trope.
problematic. And
Totally.
and not true.
Totally.
But it's like there's this, they have to demonize empathy because they know their takes are not loving. So they've got to now demonize love, which is a wild place to be. Like I don't understand how you can look yourself in the mirror and say these things and still think you're following the teachings of Jesus.
Imagine reading the parable of the Good Samaritan and being like, "Oh, well, that doesn't count here." Like, I mean, how do these people?
She literally
claim...
says that. She literally says that in the thing.
Exactly. I mean, she in this example, she is the religious leader asking Jesus, "Well, who's my neighbor?" And then he tells that story, and she's like, "No."
No, exactly.
No, thank you.
And the way that they say, like, when Jesus calls, whitewashed tombs, they use that to describe the progressives because we're too loving. Like, that was not why Jesus was calling out religious leaders, because they were too loving.
It's why do we do this, April?
I don't know.
Why do we there are so many other ways to do content online in more enjoyable circles than this space, and reading these tweets for an audience of people who are probably trying not to run themselves off the road right now listening to this. Like, there are probably people there are probably people who are more moderate, who probably don't like all of my takes, who I would imagine hear this and go, yeah, I get why Tim is as whatever, progressive as he is. Yeah, thank you. Because of takes like this. By the way, this person has almost 100,000 followers on Twitter. This person was interviewed by Doug Wilson. This person's writing a book. This person has a lot of influence.
She was just on Tucker Carlson.
Oh, yeah. And she was on Tucker Carlson.
Recently.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're not picking up little fringe accounts from, like, the dark corner of 4chan, which some dude has, like, 2 followers. These people have serious sway in the spaces that they exist in. And if they get their way, want to spread their quote-unquote good news to everyone else via submission. Like, they don't care if you like it or not. The laws must change. The culture must change. And this is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this is it's hard to pick.
Who do you want to vote for? Because I feel like I've gone first the last few times and you've just agreed with me.
Well, I'm very agreeable, honestly. Man, they're all just so bad in their own way. We got Samuel Say, talking about how psychologists can be helpful, but they're not inerrant, so trust the infallibility of Scripture for this. You got Smash Bales, who's like, children are only good to be used as arrows to shoot down the enemy. And women need to make babies 24/7. That's all they're good for. And then we got Meg, who's like, empathy-based heresy is a real problem in the church. Really, Meg.
They're all so bad.
I think I'm going to vote for Samuel Say on this one.
That was what I was going to say.
Okay. Yay, we did it. So congratulations, Samuel. You are the tweet of the week. Yeah.
No.
Well, we did it, April. I mean, we got through it.
We got through it. But at least this week we also had good news.
We did. And honestly, I do think long term, the arc of justice is still going forward.
Yes.
I mean, another piece of good news. A massive anti-trans gender-affirming care ban got shut down in Kansas because a Republican switched sides and voted against it. So that's really big. And the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals said that gender identity is a protected class in healthcare and it cannot be discriminated against. So that's also a big deal. So there definitely have been some good wins this week, okay? Yes. So I hope that people end this week on a happy, fun note and think about all the good that's happening, even despite John Macarthur saying that PTSD, OCD, and what's the other one he said?
ADHD
don't exist. They just, he Thanos snapped it. Kaboof.
Yeah,
it's gone.
Just gone.
Yeah, just gone. It's amazing. Wow, the power. So, anyway, this was fun.
Yeah. It was fun. We will do it again next week.
We will do it every week. Next week. Friends, do not forget, if you have a story that you want us to look at, maybe get on the air here, news@thenewevangelicals.com. Send me a good old-fashioned email, and we will try and get to it. So until next time, have a great day. Talk to y'all later on.
Happy weekend.
Happy weekend! Party!